Hello and welcome. It's February 1st. It's a Sunday, but in a break from the past, we will have the union budget today, and it's a slice of history because Nirmala Sitharaman will be presenting her 9th consecutive budget. That's a record. Remember, Morarji Desai presented 10 budgets, but not consecutively. So we've got plenty on this record-breaking show for you today. Lots to look forward to on this union budget at a time of uncertainty and global headwinds. My colleague, Siddharth Zarabi, our head of Business Today TV, is with us because, Siddharth, you're just back from the icy climes of Davos like me.
Yes.
We're in the sort of relative warmth of the studio, but the news treadmill never ends. You're looking forward to this budget. What number budget is it of yours consecutively?
Okay, that would reveal my age, but I'll leave that. But I think the other big part of this record budget, you spoke about Nirmala Sitharaman's and her 9th turnout with this speech, is also that there is likely to be, as per government sources and this story that we broke yesterday evening, a fundamental change in the manner in which, and according to sources, this will be the first time in 75 years of budget making in India that there would be a change, particularly in Part B. And those of our viewers who follow this very closely know that Part B of that budget speech was the real action. It was where the finance bill and all the changes on taxation and tariffs used to happen. What will this change be? Indications are that it's going to be a longer-term vision statement tying in with Viksit Bharat. And remember, Rajdeep, this government has made several changes to the nature and manner of the budget presentation exercise. The date changed, and that was brought forward. In terms of the focus, we have seen massive announcements happening outside the budget, the government showing flexibility to respond to emerging economic changes. So that, I think, at the macro level will be the big thing to look out for. And one quick element, deregulation. And this was again something that we picked up at Davos. But the markets have now currently in pre-open, and let me at this stage introduce our colleagues on the show. Shailendra Bhatnagar, Chief Markets Editor of Business Today Television, joins us here with us. Abha Bakaya, our Senior Anchor for Markets, a Consulting Editor, is here with us. Sakshi Batra tracks the markets very, very closely for Business Today Television. You see her every day on India Today and Abha. And we also have a very special announcement to make, Rajdeep. From today, the National Stock Exchange becomes the prime sponsor of the market opening and the market closing show that is shown 5 days a week here on India Today. So also some new firsts for us as well. But let me quickly go across to Abha to set the tone for the markets. The markets have, in the run-up to this budget, been a little weak, but 12 out of 15 times data shows that the markets show a bounce back. Abha, take it from here.
Good morning, Siddharth. Good morning, Rajdeep. And yes, given the state of the markets that we've seen, I think ever since the last few months, we saw a brief respite during festive season, and then there's really been completely lackluster trade and Trump's, complete, politics in the background. The budget so far, according to Market Master, seems to be kind of a subdued non-event unless we really see some major reform push. And that's where I'll come back to both of you in a minute, because what is the scope for the finance minister this time around to really give a fillip, whether it's on the consumption side, whether it's on the private capex side, in terms of some kind of incentive for corporate India to come to the table, or even if it's further government expenditure. But they do need to see some major push, not just something superficial, but something that will actually give a huge fillip to the economy. Remember, when we look at the kind of growth statistics that we're seeing here in India, we are on track, we're looking robust, particularly in the global environment. But in order to really capitalize on that and see all of those growth engines running, we are going to need to see some kind of incentive.
Finance Ministry officials, including Chief Economic Advisor, there is always a meeting of the Union Cabinet that provides formal approval, and that is Nirmala Sitharaman with a new age Bhai Khata iPad, possibly behind that red velvet box with the Ashoka emblem on it, and a resplendent sari. I'm waiting to figure out which one this is. That's the entire finance ministry brass. There is another first, Secretary of Economic Affairs, Anuradha Thakur, that you see on the left of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, a woman officer of exceptional ability and capability. So you have that touch also for the budget. We are also joined by our other guests, but I want to quickly go across to Shell. Shell, in specific terms for the markets, what is it that they are looking forward to? Because we have over the past several months seen both outflow of capital, perhaps on account of macro factors like the rupee, but also some taxation overhang as far as the market is concerned. Shell.
So, Siddharth, a three-letter word, tax. And another three-letter word, what do we do with FIIs? So, there has to be something that comes in for sovereign wealth funds, that comes in from foreign institutional investors to stem this flow of very heavy selling that you see on the Lal Street. That is something that I'm looking forward to. Then fiscal consolidation, as also a higher capex, a lower borrowing, and of course, lots of external and internal reforms. Siddharth.
Okay, before I go across to Sakshi Batra, let's quickly cut across to our Business Today reporter, Karishma Asudani. Karishma, yesterday you broke that story about a fundamental change, and as sources put it to us, a unique change never seen before in 75 years with regard to the manner in which the budget will be presented, specifically Part B. Very quickly, what is it that we can expect as far as that change is concerned? Karishma Asudani. Okay, as we connect with Karishma, visuals there, Kartavya Bhavan, the new...
Karishma is joining us. By the way, just to say, you wanted to know what sari. Remember, Tamil Nadu goes to the polls in about 2 months from now, so it's a Kanjivaram sari. Nirmala Sitharaman comes from Tamil Nadu, Rajya Sabha MP from Karnataka. But the symbolism is there. Remember, Tamil Nadu is one of the states where the BJP has never really been able to make that major breakthrough. But they will hope that with the AIDMK, they can do that. And the symbolism is of her wearing a Kanjivaram sari. This is only since Siddharth wanted to know what specifically was the sari Nirmala Sitharaman would wear. Karishma Asudani joins us. Karishma, you want to take forward the question that Siddharth raised. What is going to be unique about the budget, particularly Part B of the budget this time?
Okay.
Okay. We'll wait and see if she can. Let me just introduce our other guest joining us. Rajiv Mantri joins us, author and investor. Welcome, Rajiv, to the show. Shankar Iyer joins us, veteran journalist, author, someone who's tracked the economy for what, 50 years now? You can reveal your age. Siddharth is worried about revealing his.
This is my 37th budget.
This is your 37th budget. That's pretty awesome. There is Dr. Sanjay Baru joins us. Dr. Baru also needs no introduction. He's authored several books. He's also been editor of several economic dailies, as well as, of course, been in the Prime Minister's office. What number budget is it of yours, Dr. Baru?
35th.
35th budget. Okay, 35th budget. Okay, 35th budget, 37th budget. Siddharth,
for the record, the 27th budget, since you will persist. But,
okay, good.
But Dr. Baru, do tell us, when the government says that Part B will change, it will be a unique presentation. Income tax changes already made. Indirect taxes now completely out into a federal council. The only scope left is tariffs and customs, and that has to align with the broader trade realignment. What would you have to say? And you can also see the finance minister right up there with the rest of our officials. Dr. Baru.
Well, I don't know what they mean by changing Part B, but you're absolutely right. This time it's going to be all about tariffs because that is where significant changes are expected. What we are not seeing in the last few years was the final statement of, what are your revenues, what is your expenditure. The combined statement was not being given in the budget speech. That was left for us to read in the other documents. Now, that used to be a standard practice in the past. So I don't know if she's going to revive that. Because at the end of the speech, we need to know what is the total government has collected, how is it going to spend. Those numbers were out of the budget speech. Budget speech became essentially a political speech with Nirmala Sitharaman. So I don't know if she's going back to a standard budget speech, which is more about numbers than about policy statements.
Well, we just need to wait now pretty much till 11 a.m. to get those details. Two other guests who join us, Akshay Bhagwat, the Senior Vice President of Derivatives Research at JM Financial, and Manish Sonthalia, Director and CIO at MK Investment Managers. Very quickly to you first, Manish, what is it that would move the needle as far as market sentiment is concerned today with any budget announcement?
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Manish, you are on mute.
The only statement which the markets would be watching out for carefully would be the taxation part. LTCG, STCG, STT. You got to lower some of these. I mean, these are the only things which are worrying the market. Apart from that, the fiscal deficit number at 4.2%, your nominal GDP growth assumption of 10.5% translating into revenue collection, and incentives for exports because tariffs are hitting us, and plus your capex number. Of course, fiscal 26 will be left with some sort of revenue shortfall as things stand today. So, FY26 capex numbers are going to be whittled down in all probability. And in that backdrop, we should be looking at slightly elevated capex numbers for FY27, around 12.5 lakh crores ballpark. Plus the borrowings number, gross borrowings number at around 16.5 lakh crores. If these things do come about, markets are going to fly.
Sakshi, take it ahead with Akshay for us.
All right, Akshay, just about 3 minutes to go before the markets open for us. The indicative action is that 13 points higher on the Nifty is what we could start at 25,333. Although it's gold and silver that's crashed right at the open. 17,000 rupees down for silver, 9,000 rupees down for gold. So the over the weekend kind of a crash that we see is now getting even graver. How are you looking at the markets? What will you watch out for? What will your pre-positioning be before the market, before the speech happens? How will you trade the markets?
Good morning to all. Good morning, Sakshi. And it feels so good to see so many cheering faces on a Sunday morning. Well, for the Nifty, the data positioning continues to be weak as far as the FIs are concerned. A lot of short positions continue in the FNO segment. Technical placement is more or less neutral. I would suggest go for a level-based approach where 25,500 based spot Nifty would be an important level to watch out for. There might be some bit of an uptick in the initial first hour before the budget announcement. 25,400, 25,500 may be tested, but we need to be a bit more careful. Only if market sustains about 25,500, I would recommend to go for a buy position. Otherwise, it's more of a muted approach the market might give to the budget today.
Let's focus on some prices that have already come in. The Nifty Metals Index, ladies and gentlemen, is going to open 3 percentage points lower. A 6% down circuit on silver, on MCX, ditto for gold, and therefore all equity derivatives linked with them, Hindustan Copper, Hindustan Zinc, Vedant, National Aluminium, all of them slipping dramatically in trade. Broadly, the first 1 hour will be quiet, and then beyond 11 a.m. when the part B starts, ladies and gentlemen, the action will pick up.
So apart from, of course, the big picture, let's take a look at specific stocks that are going to be in focus. First of all, let's remind everyone, this is the first time, I think, that the budget's on a Sunday, or at least the first time in as long as I can remember. Yes, it is, say our experts who have been doing this for close to 40 years. So this is highly unusual. Markets have also opened, of course, to track all the action. Keep an eye also on pockets like defense. Keep an eye on rail. Keep an eye on anything that is PSU related, where we could see the government announce some kind of fillip or some kind of spending budgets or allocations. This is really what the market's watching out for. Any boost to manufacturing would be a huge positive. That's a bigger step that we're watching out for. Industry status for certain pockets. Of course, anything on exports and tariffs. So the hotel industry is going to be watching out. Pockets like jewelry, textiles, all of these, smaller pockets of stocks will be keeping a very, very close eye on the budget. So from a market perspective, it's not just the big picture, it's also for the broader markets and really where we could see some of that action. And key to track will be defense, will be rail. These are the pockets that have actually been moving ahead of the budget. So maybe not on the index, but in terms of a build-up, we've definitely been seeing it across some of these key pockets. All right, opening bell on your screens. Actually, what are we picking up on opening bell?
25,312. I mean, we quickly slipped into the red, Abha, as far as the Nifty is concerned, just toggling at the flat line at this point in time. Let's also pull up the Nifty Bank there to see if there is any action on the banking space. Again, flat with a negative bias. So there is nervousness right ahead of the budget speech today, viewers. That's how you're looking at. But private banks, about 0.2% higher, giving us some hope that there could be something for the financial sector, something for the... But PSU banks are down by 1.3%. There was a big expectation that something on the mergers consolidation front could be announced there. Broader markets taking a hit, 0.7% down for the mid-cap 100 index. Look at the small caps, even further down, 1.1% lower. So the larger mood, the broader market sell-off is pointing out to some nervousness. India WIX, the volatility index that tracks the greed and the fear in the markets, that's up by 3.9%, clearly indicating to a lot of nervousness on the D Street. Metals index, looking at and mirroring the gold and silver fall. It's again 4% down. What Shell was pointing out, on Friday, we had a massive 5% fall there. And the stocks that have been tracking, copper, silver, all of those stocks are down in double digits, about 15.5% lower for Hind Copper. Look at also in zinc at this point in time, a 10% lower circuit for Hindustan Zinc at 565. So all those gains that we've got in the last 1 month, many of them are going away. Hindalco down by 5%. Shell, what else are you watching out for?
Well, Sakshi, the top 5 losers are either metal stocks or related metal spaces, including MCX, 10% lower at 2275. This is, of course, the global sell-off that we are seeing. Let me just point out some positivity. We've hit upon 5 top losers. Let's look at the gainers as well. Well, the complete defensive market comes into fore. Look at Sun Pharma, 3.5% higher. And Siddharth, a very good beginning for the NSE partnership. IFCI, which is a major holder of NSE stock, is up 10%. It's the top gainer. You have Escorts in the green, 2.5% higher. The Nifty Auto Index doing pretty well because we are looking for the auto numbers to come in. And of course, the likes of Zentech ahead of the defense budget, 2% higher. Insurance stocks are doing well. That's what at least I am looking at.
So I want to come to you, Siddharth, on something because, you know, given a slight nervousness in the markets, but largely the budget has been priced in. So unless and until there's some kind of fillip to growth, there's no real particular downside as far as, Nirmala really disappoints. I mean, if she absolutely does nothing, not even any kind of surface level consumer-led incentives or something, that's really when we'll see the markets nosedive. But otherwise, I see a limited downside. What do you think?
About 3 factors to remember.
Yeah.
One, the Goldilocks movement that the Indian economy is going through, and our guests here would comment on that, but since we are focusing on the markets for the next few minutes, let me try and respond to that question that you made. Is there scope, necessity for tinkering around with further as far as our indirect tax architecture is concerned? Of course there is, but where will that happen? Outside of the budget. Is there necessity to look at further direct tax changes? Well, there could always be at the margins changing this, changing that. But remember, we are now in an environment where the government of India, the finance ministry, wants everyone to move to the new tax regime. No exemptions, lower thresholds of taxes to pay. And therefore, that is a policy direction that will continue. Therefore, what is left? It is customs tariffs. Now, customs tariffs used to take a lot of time in the budget speech. Dr. Baru would recall that it sometimes used to be 20, 30 minutes plus, including the days of Pranab Mukherjee as the finance minister. He brought that back when he came back to the finance ministry 2009 onwards. So effectively, the scope to tinker around with taxes and tariffs is limited to that extent. So what does it leave with? A statement of medium-term priorities, because remember, one of the criticisms of our budget making process is you announce something on 1st February. By the time the first policy architecture is made, half of the next fiscal year is gone. And that is why implementation becomes an issue, and outcome budgets were supposed to fix that for us. So I would say, don't surprise anyone negatively. Continue down the path of fiscal consolidation and solid, factual, credible numbers.
Go ahead, please.
Let me just mark the markets. Nifty Metals Index, Sakshi, is now down 4.5%. This comes after Friday's loss of 5.2%. In the red are the PSU banking index, 1.35% lower. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is very heavy profit booking, nothing much to be worried about. We had seen a very sharp rally in the metal prices as also in PSU bank. So money is moving from the book into the bank. Small cap index is down 1.2%. And it's a very light start to the market, Siddharth. 1,057 shares in the green, 1,200 in the red. The market is light. It could pivot if there is something interesting on the tax side.
Well, we have seen pivots in the past that
Yes.
used to happen when Part B would start. But Chetan Bhutani, who tracks infrastructure for us, standing by at Vijay Chowk. Chetan, very quickly, give us a sense of what the continuing focus for capital expenditure will be. Will it be in line trend with what we have seen over the past few years, especially post-COVID, or should we expect a major change?
So that we would be seeing a normal minimal hike that has been continuing for the past 3 to 4 years. Nirmala Sitharaman knows that the infrastructure ministries are very capable of spending their money, and they have been spending quite regularly, and so they don't have much of the budget revenue left. So now we will expect normal 3 to 4% allocation for both roads and railways coming up. Not much highway spending would be done because the ministry is itself managing its own expenses, raising money from the markets, getting its highways listed and monetized. So these strategies have worked, and in case the ministry will not be taking too much money from the budget, but a significant 3 to 5% allocation for highways, 3 to 5% for railways, and ports, shipping, waterways, telecom sector would see the minimal hike going forward. Secondly, Siddharth, what we know is, of course, the MSME sector. The government would be focusing on MSMEs and agriculture, with the government probably giving a very big announcement for the agriculture sector and in the name of the PM Kusum scheme and its subsequent continuation.
Absolutely. Dr. Baru, very quickly, deregulation is something that is echoing across the world. We have had a deregulation task force. Some policy changes have already happened, and Rajdeep and I both heard Chandrababu Naidu Garu in Davos tell us that it should no longer be about ease of doing business, it should also be about speed of doing business. Is deregulation likely to be a focus, and what would its merit be if at all it were to be announced today?
Well, clearly it has to be. You know, you spoke about Goldilocks moment, and this has become a popular phrase. I've never understood what exactly it means, because what we have, if you see the overall economic situation, is a fairly good record on fiscal stabilization. But demand has not been picking up. Demand continues to constrain capacity utilization, which is below 80% across the manufacturing sector. Private capital, has not been forthcoming. There's been a stagnant share of private capital formation to GDP. So what we really need is to trigger the animal spirits. I mean, Nirmala Sitharaman herself asked a year ago of Indian business, why are you guys not investing? And I think the answer lies with the government.
That's absolutely right, sir. In fact, Sakshi, just come in on the defense theme, because defense is one of the themes, and this question that Dr. Baru raised, we have put it across to policymakers and to industry, and they say, listen, don't always expect investments to come in mature sectors. Look at new age sectors which are seeing investment. Explain this point of view from the defense pack on the screen. Sakshi Batra.
Today, defense sector is up by about 0.5%. So looking at it, there is a high expectation that there could be a higher allocation. Remember, this is the first budget after Operation Sindoor. So that's why this is going to be extremely important. We have been seeing a slew of announcements where the Defense Acquisition Council has been announcing massive orders over the last 6 months. This time around, again, there is an expectation. How much could that defense outlay increase by is the question. Will it be 10% all the way to 25% as well? That's the broad range that most of the experts are expecting. What it comes out to be finally is something that we will have to watch out for in this speech. But definitely, defense is going to be a talking point in the budget this time around. There will be a higher allocation in the budget, that the government will be doing. That's for sure. What is the percentage outlay? Plus, I think, Siddharth, the big question is, given the, lower headroom that we have shortfall of tax collections here. How much fiscal room is there to really elevate the defense spending is the key question. Will there be a way where the finance minister will be able to raise the non-tax revenues and be able to spend big on defense? Looking at the geopolitical scenario is something that we need to watch out for. It's a complete changed world order, and we need to see how the government will be maneuvering.
Shankar, come in on this, because the point that the survey made about a disinvestment approach which says that the government will perhaps hold up to only 26% and therefore a second round of further divestitures. Now, there have been questions around individual companies. Let's not talk about that. But taking that point forward, how much of a scope do you think? You saw that macro chart in terms of percentage trend line shifting downwards as far as defense expenditure is concerned. But from your point of view, how much of scope is there for a post-Operation Sindoor moment to be captured as far as defense allocations are concerned?
See, the defense allocations, for them to translate into actual acquisitions and purchases takes time. So I expect that the announcement would be a kind of medium-term perspective, just like with the NATO guys, they are saying we will reach 3% of GDP and 5% of GDP. India will probably present, Nirmala Sitharaman's budget should sort of probably give you a roadmap for the next 5 years on how they will increase or ramp up the spending in defense. Remember, you may not have a headroom this year, but you can always promise that there will be headroom in the next year and the year after that. And that should be the approach anyway for defense acquisitions, because the process is very long drawn.
Right.
And as far as the story, you mentioned the PSU disinvestment story. I think whoever came up with this idea of 26% sort of never looked back at it, at the government's own record. Since 2004, the 30 companies have been listed through various IPOs. These 30 companies are valued at around 19 lakh crores. Out of these 30 companies, 29 companies, government owns more than 89%. So let's get to 51 first, then we can be ambitious about 26. Let's sell some stuff first, you know. I mean, this is
fair point. There
this
is so
is a
much
dead
scope.
duck, actually.
Abha, you wanted to take it forward with our market guests. Viewers, we'll stay on the markets for another few minutes and then go back to broader policy making. Abha.
Absolutely. I think, just before I do that, Siddharth, I know he asked everyone else, but I want to ask Rajdeep how many years he's been actually observing the budget. Yes.
I can tell you a little story. In 1994, I was at NDTV when we were commissioned to do the post-budget reactions. So I recall standing, and this was Manmohan Singh's probably third or fourth budget in 1994. I recall standing in front of the BSE in Mumbai on Dalal Street, and the connection kept going off because the technology wasn't good enough. So we were doing it for Doordarshan, cracking large OB van, I think had been placed just outside BSE.
I remember those. Yeah.
So that's my first memory. And it is a day since then that I dread, because as an economics graduate, it forces me to almost go back and start reading about things that I thought I had forgotten over the last 30, 35 years. Yeah, but it's been a long time. And I think that was, Manmohan Singh brought, that entire early 90s brought excitement to the budget. You can, whichever way you look at it, after 1991, a certain excitement came in, and it's never really gone. With the Chidambaram budgets in a United Front government, then you had Yashwant Sinha, Jaswant Singh. Every budget had something that became a major talking point. And I think that's been the big change that's taken place. Rajiv is probably the youngest here out of us all in terms of tracking budget. But as an investor, I can very quickly ask you, is there that excitement that exists today about a union budget? Or is there a sense, as Siddharth pointed out, they just want the markets just want the finance minister not to do anything that will harm the budget or harm the idea of the economy. No retrospective tax kind of bombshell suddenly being brought in. That's all that people really want.
No, I think once you achieve the major tax reforms, the budget becomes a more mundane procedure and process, as it should. Obviously, the earlier era had a number of major policy changes that required to be implemented, and the budget became a platform to announce those.
And also, so much more happens outside the budget, and you've got the geopolitical risks that are taking place. I know friends of mine who are more interested to know what Donald Trump's going to do with Iran, which they fear is going to have far greater impact than what happens at home. He's made an announcement today that India has agreed to buy oil from Venezuela and not Iran. Now, he does these statements.
But Rajdeep, that's fair enough. 2 days back, Prime Minister spoke to Delcy Rodriguez, Venezuelan stopgap president or Maduro's stand-in president. So
Yeah, but why should Donald Trump, my only problem is why should Donald Trump be making that announcement? We are a sovereign nation. We will tell.
There is really no announcement. We've always been buying Venezuelan crude. It was the US and allies who sanctioned Venezuelan crude. We couldn't buy it and we had to switch. Now if it's available on the market without sanctions, it's
My
fine.
point is, why should Donald Trump be making whatever decisions are taking us? Anyway, the pictures coming in are part of the ritual of budget making, where the finance minister meets the Rashtrapati, presents a copy of the budget to her.
E-copy.
In copy, and then sort of moves on her way to Parliament. So this is all part of the act of budget making. Next to Mr. Murmu is the MOS Finance.
Yes.
And he's also now the UP BJP president. So Mr. Chaudhary wears various hats. So Draupadi Murmu and Nirmala Sitharaman, and probably, of course, you've got a woman president and a woman finance minister. That doesn't happen too often. Today I was recalling when they spoke of Nirmala Sitharaman 9th consecutive budget. Nirmala Sitharaman first came on a TV studio on a show I did in 2008. And the only reason is I rang up the BJP person and said, I want an English-speaking spokesperson. Because they were giving me only Hindi-speaking spokespersons on an English language show. And they said, oh no, we've got this new spokesperson. Would you like her? I said, sure. To the credit of Nirmala Sitharaman, she came perfectly prepared, focused, came to the studio. Didn't even say that I want to do it from some external Zoom link. There was no Zoom also in those days. Came, and it's quite a meteoric rise when you think of it. She's been Minister of Defense and she's been Minister of Finance.
And Commerce. Let's not forget.
So
Commerce.
In 17
in
years,
2014, yes.
since I first met her, Nirmala Sitharaman यहाँ से वहाँ गई है, हम यहीं के यहीं रहे. That's the only difference.
But I think
Before we slip into a break, a quick look at the markets. Wrap it up for us, Sakshi, on what the markets are looking like right now.
Absolutely. So the markets are nervous. I mean, we are at 932 at this point in time. And what we are going to be probably asking the question is, after we've signed mother of all deals, is it going to be mother of all budgets that finance minister is going to present today? And that is something that the markets will be watching out for. Remember, the markets are down 4% down on the Nifty ahead of the budget all of January. And the Nifty is now only looking at any good news by way of taxation that can probably lift the sentiments on ground for investors at large. At this point in time, a nervous getting into the budget speech at this point in time.
Okay.
Fingers crossed for all the sectors.
All right. At this point, let's thank our colleagues from Business Today, Shailendra Bhatnagar, Abha Bakaya, and Sakshi Batra. And viewers, this is also a beginning for us for the Business Today show, the markets show opening and closing here on India Today, brought to you by the National Stock Exchange. As we continue our coverage, I want to toss this one to you, Rajdeep. In terms of that term that you have dealt with, dream budgets, the scope for dream budgets again changing because the Indian economy has been opened up, license Raj has been dismantled to a very, very significant extent. Yet budget making continues to fascinate everyone, including us who do it for a living. What do you think is your most seminal memory of the budget days?
Look, I'm not going to go into the past. You'll make me feel even older. But I'll only say that these words used, big bang budget, dream budget, I think we should refrain from making, these catchwords. They make great headlines. You remember Chidambaram's budget in 97 was sort of billed as the dream budget. Then we've had budgets being built as big bang budgets. I think budget making should be prosaic. What should be there is a vision. I have absolutely no problem that budget making increasingly should be about the vision and the direction in which you're taking the government. The word you used is the buzzword at the moment, deregulation. Everyone you talk about to says this budget will be about deregulation. Now, what does that mean? I know Shankar has been writing about it for years. And just one more point.
Yeah.
For years, we have not focused on state budgets. As the economic survey also pointed out, you've got about 19 states now with high revenue deficits. How much do we actually look at state budgets? State budgets actually at the end of the day affect far more.
No, Rajdeep, and that is why one of the other things, and that happens every 5 years, which is very significant this time, which is the report of the 16th Finance Commission headed by Arvind Panagaria, that will now decide what will be the share of states in the overall central kitty. And remember, from 2000-2001, it's gone up from 29.5% to 41%, with that additional 1% of 41 being on account of Jammu and Kashmir. And remember, I think for the state governments, they will perhaps, state finance ministers, state chief ministers will be looking at that with a great focus, because it's also about the so-called alleged north-south divide, which is also played out politically, and the allegations that the center is pulling back funding. See what is happening on G bill.
Sure, and you've got 4 big state elections in just a couple of months. So we've seen in the past, budgets have been at sometimes influenced by immediate electoral considerations, which is why I said you want a broad vision. You don't want to look at just the next 3 months, and to the credit.
Which is why the promise of the government that
right.
75 years might be a change. We might just see this whole changing once again. We will be left with no arguments to make on it.
So in a strange way, rather than look at the next 3 months, look at the next 20 years. The government talks of Viksit Bharat 2047. But Shankar Iyer, because you've been writing about it so often in terms of deregulation, this whole buzzword, it's become almost like a buzzword that this budget will see deregulation. We've seen many false alarms there with governments in the past. There have been pushbacks. Do you believe now the government has the strength, both politically and in terms of certain global headwinds, to take the kind of tough decisions, some of which have been taken in the last 12 months by the Modi government, the so-called Reform Express? Do you believe that that is going to be a critical aspect of what we will see today?
Nothing like a crisis to clarify the mind.
That's right.
So all of the reforms that have happened in India are mostly driven by some form of crisis or not, and that sort of gives me a shot at plugging my book, Accidental India. But more importantly, if you look at the last 10 years itself, labor reforms, the labor code was first drawn out in 2015-16, was reformalized in 2019, was sent to the state governments in 2020, and has been officially sort of unveiled in 2026. This is a government which has had a full majority. This is a government or a political alliance which is ruling in 15 states, and yet they couldn't push. Now let's go back to ease of doing business. For 10 years, we've been hearing ease of doing business. This year, earlier, I think in August or September, Parliament, there was a question, how many clearances you require for a power project? 116. And for the other sectors, it's even worse. 10 years back, when Amitabh Kant used to be the new poster boy in DPIT and sort of talk about ease of doing business, I asked him whether they have ever done a flowchart of the clearances, the permissions. 115 clearances, which means that the file moves from the municipal center to the state capital to the national capital like a mileage gatherer. And all of this is completely raised. Let's see whether the Somnathan committee actually produces something. Because it's easy to say mother of all deals when we still don't know what is the impact of the UK deal.
No, but let's look at this. The fact is, yes, over the years, there have been various, this debate has gone on about the number of regulatory compliances you need. To be fair to this government, they've made the effort. You cannot fault the Narendra Modi government on effort. Whether it's translated on the ground into, I meet MSMEs who still say that they get haunted both by GST tax inspectors, there's tax inspector Raj of GSTs, and they still have an unusual number of compliances to fill in. So it comes down to it, Rajiv, one thing is intent. The Modi government has shown intent on some of these issues, particularly over the last 12 months. Intent translating into action on the ground. Is that to be done in Delhi or is that to be done in the states? Is a question that's often asked.
I can't sort of resist the temptation.
Yes.
This government intent is always executed. Whether policy is executed or not is a separate question. The Prime Minister says...
Give me an example.
So they have said for years that they will fix the power sector. This is the second bailout that is being planned next month in the new electricity bill in the last 10 years. Last time the Udaya or scheme was there. This time will be some new name. But the power sector loses something like 80,000 crores every year, and they haven't fixed it.
Very quickly, Rajiv, yes. Do you believe, where is the block for intent? The the buzz is that this budget will be about a vision statement. It's one thing to have a vision. How do you translate the vision into action on the ground in a country of a subcontinental size with chief ministers, many of whom believe they are just as powerful as Delhi?
No, so some of these items are in the union list, and thus the central government has to drive them. But many of the items, like we discussed, are also now state subjects, and which have to be driven by different states at different levels.
But 19 states with huge revenue deficits before every
absolutely,
election, the kind of
absolutely.
freebie
So
culture that it
there
is.
is the-
I mean,
there- there is the double engine sarkar now.
No, but whether it's double engine, triple
And they
engine, the
should-
fact is
no, no,
across the
the-
board, they're,
But
They should
Rajdeep,
implement.
one
They should
political
implement these.
intent.
They
Yes.
should implement these reforms.
Yeah, go
One
ahead.
political intent which is being displayed perhaps is also in the choice of the sari of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. I'm going to put that out. It's very interesting that she is wearing a hand-woven Kanjivaram silk sari, sending a message to Tamil Nadu. And if you look at, this is her 9th consecutive budget. And from 2019 to 2026, the transition has been rather very, very interesting. Last year, the message was going to another poll-bound state, that is my home state of Bihar, where she chose to wear Madhubani print sari. This time it is Kanjivaram, honoring perhaps the Tamil Nadu's age-old weaving legacy. So that is how it has been from Ikkat to Bomkai to Katha and to Madhubani. So the message is very clear that the intent and of course the political messaging is for one of the poll-bound states, which is Tamil Nadu. We should be prepared for some SOPs to come in for also Bengal and Tamil Nadu, keeping in mind that. But just look at the transition, Rajdeep.
Sure, but
2019 to
I
2026.
take your point, but style, you see, this is Sanjay Baru, as someone who worked closely with government over the years. Is there a tendency of finance ministers to play to the gallery as well? That this is their big day in the office, so they need headline, whether it's the sari you wear, whether it's the kind of, there has to be sher or shairi that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh as finance minister would resort to. Otherwise, a very careful man, suddenly on budget day, you would hear the finance minister remembering fairs or poets of the past. Do you believe style sometimes overcomes substance? Because substance goes well beyond, well beyond what happens in the budget.
This is what television has done to the union budget. You asked earlier, since when I was covering the budgets.
Yes.
In fact, 40 years, 1985 was the first time that I actually sat in Parliament listening to the union budget. VP Singh was the finance minister. It was not on television, right? When live television started on budget day, finance ministers have become, first of all, conscious about their national audience. And increasingly, governments have used the budget speech as a political speech. I think, we've been talking about the significance of the budget. Really, Part B was the only part of the budget which was important in the old days. Because you talked about taxes, you talked about customs, duties, etc. All that is out, right? All that is mostly out. That's why I said this year the budget will be largely about tariffs.
And that is why, Rajdeep, perhaps the point that Dr. Baru is making, more attention in the political economy terms should focus on the 16th Finance Commission report. That will be significant. I just want to make a quick interjection.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Shankar, you said you were plugging your book about the accidental India. To my left here, Dr. Baru wrote about accidental Prime Minister. So, Rajdeep, Maria, imagine the coincidence of having two authors.
Accidental
And both of them are not accidental authors. But yeah, Maria.
So we are looking at those visuals now coming in where the photo opportunity at the Rashtrapati Bhavan is over. Now Finance Minister is heading to Parliament. That's where the meeting with the cabinet will happen, and the cabinet will be approving the budget, and then the finance minister heads to the Lok Sabha for a joint session where it will be about tabling of the budget. Piyush Mishra is joining us from the Rashtrapati Bhavan, from outside Rashtrapati Bhavan. Piyush, so finance minister is now on her way to the parliament.
Well, yes, absolutely. Well, absolutely, Maria. Finance Minister has just left from the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Right behind me, you can also see the convoy. This is the convoy of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, which is now heading towards the Parliament. She is now coming out from the President House. This is a Raisina Hill, and now she is going towards the Parliament House, where the cabinet meeting will happen. And in that cabinet meeting, the budget is going to be passed. And after the budget is passed, it is going to be tabled at 11 a.m. Before that, Finance Minister has just met with the President of India, where she has sought a permission to table the budget. And after seeking permission, now these are the live visuals which we are getting from Raisina Hill President House, where Nirmala Sitharaman has just come out along with her colleagues, and she is now going towards the Parliament. My video journalist Ankit Singh can zoom and show you the visuals of her vehicle entering inside the Parliament. These are the live visuals of the new Parliament building, where Nirmala Sitharaman has just entered. You can see as to how her vehicle has gone inside the Parliament House. Any minute from now, we will also see, Maria, the cabinet meeting to take place, and the cabinet is going to pass the budget, and then
I'm just going to stop you,
the
Piyush.
budget will be tabled. A lot of discussions, a lot of
I'll stop
expectations.
Piyush at a moment because,
Yes,
Maria, one of the points that was made is we're going to look at specific areas, and our budget dashboard will provide us that, of the critical areas, the challenges that lie ahead of Nirmala Sitharaman. Now, one of the areas, of course, is infrastructure. The Narendra Modi government has focused a lot of its political equity and financial equity, if you want to call it that, on building a strong infrastructural base. They've tried to make sure that that becomes, in a way, a big talking point. One critical area that Shankar mentioned, though, is power. Just give us a sense of investments that have been made in roads, in power over the last few years, and whether this government has any more fiscal headroom to continue with that kind of infrastructure.
I'm looking at the roads first. Remember, the government has been emphasizing that it is spending a lot in building infrastructure. So look at this graphics. This is essentially talking about the road infrastructure over the last few years, particularly financial year 2020 onwards. There has been overall the number of highways built per year that has gone up. If you look at it, it has moved up to 13.3K per kilometer. These are the visuals now coming in from the main gate of the Parliament of India, where the entire team, this is the budget drafting team, along with Finance Minister there. This is the second round of photo opportunity, and then she heads inside. I'm looking at that visual, Rajdeep, and as a woman, I want to highlight also the second woman who has been involved in this drafting, along with the Finance Minister, that is the DEA. A word on her, Siddharth. This is rather interesting because the focus has been
Well,
also
Anuradha
about
Thakur
fixing.
Maria is actually one of the stars in policy making. The Department of Economic Affairs, one of the most crucial departments in the Ministry of Finance, because pretty much everything, including the appointment file for the governor of the RBI, goes through her. So I think obviously chosen for her merit and performance, and clearly this has the hallmark, this budget, of a very capable set of officials. But remember, this is also a unique budget in the sense that there is no finance secretary. Rajdeep, that's usually the process, that the finance secretary is considered the first amongst equals and convenes the entire process. So I guess in some ways, the finance secretary not being appointed, the reasons are not known publicly. But I thought that is also Dr. Baru appoint.
I believe the cabinet secretary is doubling up as the finance secretary.
Well, he was one of the best policy makers that we have seen in North Block for.
But would that be the first occasion in the country's history that you have a budget exercise taking place without
in recent memory,
without a full-fledged? I don't think it's ever happened that you would not have a finance secretary at a time when the budget is in place.
Absolutely.
I mean, that, it certainly is a question worth asking. Why don't you have, you need a full-time finance secretary, surely, Mr. Zarabi, don't
yes,
you?
Absolutely.
I mean, the government should be giving you a reason. You're saying...
Well, I think it really does. The finance secretary is not a post. It is the first among equals. But that role has obviously been performed by...
It's a 12-member committee which has been involved in this drafting.
Maria, since you have the budget dashboard, I wonder if you have the data on GST collections, if at all it's there. But the reason I ask is, viewers, we just have had the latest GST data come in, and this broader point.
So this is the number here.
Yeah, okay,
let's go ahead. Go ahead,
yes.
Maria.
So this is about the GST collection annually. If you look at the larger picture, for financial year 2025, it is around 16.5 lakh crores. In 2024, it was 22.1 lakh crores. So remember, it was in the second half, around October, is when the second generation GST reforms were brought in. So the government's calculation certainly has been that this will increase the overall GST collection. Projection
And
for
Maria,
this year.
you keep that data on screen because we have the latest January month data, and there's a political economy story which Rajdeep, Maria, our guests could reflect on. Net GST collections in the month of January are up 6.8%. But the most interesting part, if you see from a GST, and we know the way it is calculated, Haryana has seen 27% growth. And the steepest decline at 46% is in the state of Jharkhand. Now, with the framework of GST, Shankar, does this sort of tell us that Haryana is now a powerhouse state that has gone beyond what it was 15, 20 years, 30 years ago?
Naib Saini can be happy for 24 hours, but the fact is that this reflects the higher sales in automobiles and therefore the indent on the GST collections from Haryana. And Jharkhand is down because no mining has happened due to unseasonal rainfall, and the down numbers in total mining were visible in the GDP figures. So this is a one
Goa
swallow
has
story.
also struggled with that.
Yeah.
Dr. Baru, on the 16th Finance Commission, before we go back to Maria, how significant is this report for center-state relationship and that so-called divide that was coming up, at least in debate terms?
No, first of all, the Finance Commission report is significant because it's actually a constitutional body that every 5 years has to take a view on the distribution of finances between center and states. And many state governments have been complaining that they have not been getting due share. So what this Finance Commission says is very significant. It is also significant that this is one of the first Finance Commissions headed by a non-finance chairman. Arvind Panagari, as a trade economist. You know, for the last several years, we've had some people who have been in the field of public finance. So purely in professional terms, I'm curious to see what kind of imprint the chairman would have, because he's not a finance guy.
We're just getting some breaking news at the moment. Gold and silver continue to crash. Remember, there's been a lot of investment in recent times in gold and silver. But the big news this morning is gold and silver continue to crash. Gold, silver prices have hit their lower circuits today. Prices have crashed ahead of union budget. The price crash amidst the strengthening NG dollar. You want to explain that, Siddharth, for our viewers? What explains gold and silver crashing in this manner?
We had commodity market experts earlier on the show. There are two reasons. One, that this rally was unprecedented. And there is some fundamental, particularly on silver, which regards to the new the new EV age that we are in. But profit booking seems to be the single most important factor. Maybe Rajiv can add to that. And the fact that as far as the global uncertainty is concerned, Greenland and other things that President Trump has been up to have also fed into safe haven buying, and gold, of course, the safest of the safest bets.
No, these things go in a reflexive loop. High prices, in fact, counterintuitively sometimes bring in even more investors who come in out of greed.
It's the fear of missing out, Rajiv, which is a lot of people
FOMO,
fall for that. FOMO.
Driving it into a parabolic rise.
Okay. Maria, you wanted to give us a graphic on gold rates and how they've gone.
Yes, so this is how it is placed right now. And of course, this is the assessment, as you were pointing out, it has hit the lower circuit. But it's actually showing that, sudden increase post 2024 in the last 2 years. And the increase has been rather sharp from 2025 January onwards. So perhaps in the last 1 year alone, this is how the graph is looking like. So this is the price of gold. And now let's look at the silver prices. That again has been growing up sharply since January 2025. So it is in the last 1 year. And this has to do with how the global, the turbulence has been globally and with regards to geopolitics. I think when we look at these numbers, Rajiv Mantri, come in on this, with both gold and silver hitting the lower circuit just ahead of the budget, should this be read in terms of some kind of announcement which can be also for the government to acknowledge it as a matter of concern?
So I would not read too much into the week-to-week prices, but I think there is a beyond the week-to-week prices, there is a bigger story probably here regarding the status of the dollar in the international economy. I think a lot of analysts and commentators have been looking at that very closely. on how the dollar's position is getting weaker and people are seeking alternatives. Now, obviously, there are no alternatives. Maybe Shankar, you want to also comment on that? We're just talking about
Just to add, we've got more breaking news. Because there's gross GST collection numbers announced, rise 6.2% in January to over 1.93 lakh crores. The gross GST collections rise to by 6.2% in January. Shankar, there's been a concern over tax revenues in 25-26. States have also had their concerns on this. How do you see it? GST is broadly seen as a game changer compared to previous systems. And the government did go in for reforms in October to try and simplify certain systems. Has enough been done? Obviously, it won't be done in the budget now. It will be done outside the budget. But do you believe the government has enough fiscal headroom at the moment?
Just about, I think, 1 lakh crore must be there with the government. It has a very limited headroom just now because the corporate and direct taxes collections are down, the GST has been cut. The GST story, in fact, is interesting that the government had estimated that they would lose only about 48,000 crores or 50,000 crores because of the cuts, because they expected an upside in the sectors where they have raised GST rate. But that hasn't happened. In the last 3 months, the GST collections have been down by about 60,000 crores, which was far in excess of what they had estimated. So there is something that they don't understand, and that this is typically about continental size economy, is you wonder which part of the story is not playing out. And to some extent, their own inability to grasp it is their own fault because they are not willing to release GST data. This data of collection of GST, just like the question about Haryana and Jharkhand was asked, if this data was allowed to be explored by economists, analysts, was made public, was put into AI, you would get much more to the district level to propel the economy. Their inability, or rather resistance to release data, referenceable data, is actually holding back the economy.
Okay, we've got Prime Minister Modi has reached Parliament Union budget. This is, of course, again, part of the rituals and tradition that you have a budget cabinet meeting before the finance minister eventually goes to the Lok Sabha. So that meeting is taking place. But Maria, you just want to give us the GST annual collections on the budget dashboard.
Yes, so just look at this data. And of course, the GST reforms, the first set came in the year 2018. And since then, it has been increasing, barring the year 21. That was the COVID year, of course. And then comes this particular graph of a sharp rise of 22.1 lakh crores in financial year 25. And the sense certainly is that it will grow up further in this year. But as Siddharth was pointing out, perhaps the bigger concern will be with regards to states and what is their share in this collection, because that's what the states have been saying in terms of their share going down.
Rajdeep, in fact, 1st February is another first. We have spoken about some first, and this is that the 40% rate that applies to luxury cars, to tobacco, pan masala also kicks in from today. Yes, Dr. Baru.
You see, one of the issues which we're not talking about is the suggestion that we should get away from the secrecy of the budget. You just shown the finance minister going to Rashtrapati Bhavan, now briefing the cabinet, cabinet hears it for the first time. All this is from an earlier era where taxation was the key to the budget presentation. All of us are looking at sales tax, excise duties, etc. All that is out of the budget. And I think there is a time has come for open budgeting that happens in most modern economies, most developed economies. There's no reason for this secrecy. There's no reason, as Shankar said, data should be available in advance for people to analyze.
You're saying it should be before the budget speech, the data should be put out in the public
put
domain.
out everything and let people look at the numbers. And the finance minister just comes to the parliament to get parliament's authorization for the spending, for expenditure and for revenue raising. But today, at a time when none of the taxes are going to be impacted, the kind of secrecy we saw in the old days is no longer relevant.
Okay, that's an interesting point.